Story 1. Grief, I have learned, is really just love. It is all the love you want to give but cannot. All that unspent love gathers in the corners of your eyes, the lump in your throat, and in that hollow part of your chest. Grief is just love with no place to go. Story 2. When a mosquito lands on you, you realize that not every problem can be solved with violence. Story 3. President Lyndon B. Johnson once said, "If you can convince the lowest white man he is better than the best colored man, he will not notice you are picking his pocket. Give him somebody to look down on, and he will empty his pockets for you." Story 4. Anyone can love a thing because that is as easy as putting a penny in your pocket. But to love something despite knowing its flaws and loving them too is rare, pure, and perfect. Story 5. It is my estimation that every man who ever had a statue made of him was one kind of rascal or another. Malcolm Reynolds. Story 6. Not that I want to be a god or a hero. I just want to change into a tree, grow for ages, and not hurt anyone. Czeslaw Milosz. Story 7. Hurt people hurt others. Perhaps the future you are worrying about doesn't even include you. Bad food tastes good when you are starving. Do not take criticism from someone you would not take advice from. A friend to all is a friend to none. Find what you would die for, then live for it. Story 8. I do not fear death. I had been dead for billions of years before I was born and had not suffered the slightest inconvenience from it. Story 9. I want artificial intelligence to do my laundry and dishes so that I can focus on art and writing, not for artificial intelligence to do my art and writing so that I can handle my laundry and dishes. Story 10. I do not believe this darkness will endure. It's gotten me through a lot, as has the saying, hope is like the sun. If you only believe in it when you see it, you will never make it through the night. Story 11. Do not walk in front of me. I may not follow. Do not walk behind me. I may not lead. Walk beside me and be my friend. Story 12. Sometimes life is like a dark tunnel. You cannot always see the light at the end, but if you keep moving, you will reach a better place. Story 13. I have learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Maya Angelou. Story 14. You cannot hate yourself into a version you will love. It is never too late to be who you want to be. The best time to start learning any skill is when you are 7. The second best time is today. Story 15. I would rather watch flies fornicate. My granddad said it on October 28, 1978, when he asked what I was watching on television. I was watching Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. Story 16. I don't remember the context, probably someone criticizing another person, but the quote resonated with me. The bar was so low it was practically a tripping hazard in hell, and yet here you are, limbo dancing with the devil. Story 17. We are called human beings, not doings. This always reminds me to slow down and that it is okay to just exist. Story 18. It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life. Story 19. I don't remember who wrote it, but the entire purpose of your life might be to serve as a warning to others. Story 20. Whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same. Wuthering Heights has been my favorite since I read it. Story 21. America is the wealthiest nation on earth, but its people are mainly poor, and poor Americans are urged to hate themselves. To quote the American humorist Ken Hubbard, "It isn't a crime to be poor, but it might as well be. In fact, it is a crime for an American to be poor, even though America is a nation of poor. Every other nation has folk traditions of men who were poor but extremely wise and virtuous, making them more estimable than anyone with power and wealth. No such tales are told by the American poor. They mock themselves and glorify their betters. The meanest eating or drinking establishment, owned by a man who is himself poor, is very likely to have a sign on its wall asking this cruel question. If you're so smart, why aren't you rich? There will also be an American flag no larger than a child's hand, glued to a lollipop stick and flying from the cash register. The quote is shared from a monograph written by the character Howard W. Campbell, who is also Vonnegut's character in Mother Night. Campbell became a Nazi propagandist styled after Goebbels, but was an American double agent who was just playing a role to inform for the United States in that book. Story 22. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Learn to care less. What other people say and think about you is not about you. It's about them and what they are uncomfortable with. Forget those who forget about you. These are not exactly quotes, but sayings I have learned to live by. Story 23. Yesterday is the past. Tomorrow is a mystery. But today is a gift. That's why it is called the present. Story 24. Not that I condone fascism or any ideology for that matter. Ideologies, in my opinion, are not good. A person should not believe in an ideology. He should believe in himself. I quote John Lennon, "I don't believe in the Beatles, I just believe in me." Good point there. After all, he was the walrus. I could be the walrus, but I would still have to ask for rides from people. Story 25. It is possible to do everything right and still lose. We cannot control the wind, but we can adjust our sails. I wish none of this had happened. So do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. Story 26. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. But today is a gift. That is why we call it the present. One often meets his destiny on the road he takes to avoid it. Believe in yourself and all that you are. Know that there is something inside you that is greater than any obstacle. Story 27. Well, I must endure the presence of a few caterpillars if I wish to become acquainted with the butterflies from The Little Prince. Story 28. We judge our actions based on our intentions, but we judge other people's intentions based on their actions. The person who cut you off on the road probably didn't see you, and the old acquaintance you ran into at the grocery store might have been having a terrible day and just didn't want to chat. Everyone around you lives a life as complex and meaningful as your own, and they all deserve to be treated with a little extra grace by their fellow humans. Story 29. It is not that we stop playing games when we grow older. We grow older because we stop playing games. George Bernard Shaw. Respect my existence or expect my resistance. I never lose. I either win or I learn. Nelson Mandela. It is possible to make no mistakes and still lose. That is not failure, that is life. Jean-Luc Picard. I hope I die before I grow old. The Who. I hope I am old before I die. Robbie Williams. Story 30. Give a man your jacket and he is warm for a day. Set a man on fire and he is warm for the rest of his life. Story 31. I have two sayings. Leave people better than you found them, and I don't like you enough for your opinion to matter. Story 32. Treat everyone the way you want to be treated. This saying grounds me so I don't become an unpleasant person. Story 33. The grass may seem greener on the other side, but it could also be growing on top of a septic tank. Story 34. Here's to the unconventional ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes. The ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the unconventional ones, we see genius. Because the ones who are bold enough to believe they can change the world are the ones who do. Story 35. He believed that within the beauty of the world lay a secret. He felt that the heart of the world beat at a terrible cost and that the pain and beauty of the world were in a relationship of diverging equity. In this imbalance, the blood of many might ultimately be exacted for the vision of a single flower. Reading this quote at the age of 17 in high school English class convinced me that art is the most noble pursuit on this earth. Story 36. My father always said, when I was a teenager or young adult, if youth knew, if old age could. It took me a while to understand, but now I realize he was telling me I was a know-it-all and was trying to encourage me to calm down a bit. Story 37. There is no trouble so great or grave that cannot be much diminished by a nice cup of tea. Bernard Paul Hero. Story 38. I have a few thoughts. You cannot burn a bridge and then get upset when I don't visit. You do not have to light yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Do not define your own success by someone else's terms. Decide for yourself who you want to be and plan your own course. Story 39. I keep a commonplace file of these in my phone, so when something pings one of them, I can find it easily. We must persevere. After all, what else is there to do? A robot in a Star Wars game. The most important step a person can take is the next one. The way of kings. Life, although it may only be an accumulation of anguish, is dear to me, and I will defend it. Frankenstein. Sometimes a hypocrite is nothing more than a person who is in the process of changing. Dalliner Colon. Now I am bolder, angrier, and more joyful. None of these things contradict each other. Enka. Jemison, how long till Black Future Month? Stories. It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life. Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Your boos mean nothing. I've seen what makes you cheer. Rick and Morty. Moving parts in rubbing contact require lubrication to avoid excessive wear. Honorifics and formal politeness provide lubrication where people rub together. Often the very young, the untraveled, the naive, and the unsophisticated deem these formalities empty, meaningless, or dishonest, and scorn to use them. No matter how pure their motives, they thereby throw sand into machinery that does not work too well at best. Robert A. Heinlein. When we are tired, we are attacked by ideas we conquered long ago. Friedrich Nietzsche. And finally, don't water troubled seeds that haven't been planted yet by worrying about an outcome you can't control. Which was said by me. Story 40. A fool and his money are soon parted. I think I got it from Calvin and Hobbes many years ago, but I will always remember. Story 41. Death is the least of our troubles. Only when I am weak may I carry my true strength. Story 42. Usually misquoted as most men lead lives of quiet desperation. The correct quote is, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. Henry David Thoreau. Story 43. You own everything that happened to you. Tell your stories. If people wanted you to write positively about them, they should have behaved better. And Lamott. Story 44. 1500 years ago, everyone knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everyone believed the Earth was flat. And 15 minutes ago, you thought we humans were alone on it. Imagine what you will know tomorrow. Story 45. It has been a long time. I should not have left you without a rhyme about what the nine or what the technology does. Story 46. The flow of time is always cruel. The speed seems different for each person, but no one can change it. One thing that does not change with time is a memory of younger days. I was playing an exciting three-dimensional adventure, and I was not expecting to get philosophical. Story 47. Sometimes the questions are complicated, and the answers are simple. Dr. Seuss. Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened. Dr. Seuss. The most important things are the hardest to say because words diminish them. Stephen King. Story 48. I have learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Story 49. Sitting at a bar one day after an argument with the woman I was dating, I shared my story with the bartender. He told me, "Son, women are special and dangerous because they are the only beings that bleed for 7 to 10 days and don't die." For some reason, his words have always stuck with me. Story 50. I have two reminders. All things must pass serves as a reminder that everything is fleeting and nothing lasts forever, which helps during tough times. Anything worth doing is worth doing poorly reminds me that being bad at something doesn't mean I shouldn't try it. I have spent enough of my life avoiding things because I can't do them perfectly. All it does is waste time. Story 51. Happy are those whose heart's desire is for righteousness, for they will have their desire. Matthew 5. Story 52. It's smarter to be lucky than it is lucky to be smart. Charlemagne in the Broadway musical Pippin by Stephen Schwartz. Story 53. If you stand for nothing, you fall for anything. I don't know if people really say that or if it is just lyrics by the hip-hop group Public Enemy, later used by Katy Perry. Also, if the punishment for a crime is only a fine, it is illegal only for the poor. Story 54. Oh yes, sitting. The great leveler. From the lowliest peasant to the mightiest pharaoh, who doesn't enjoy a good sit? Story 55. I have two very different reasons. One is, that's your sister, and the other is, without the darkness, we would never see the stars. Story 56. No matter where you go, there you are. This is a more elegant way of expressing that you cannot escape from yourself. Story 57. Skin, wonderful skin. Keeps things out and keeps things in. This was said to me by an old man at a train station in the rain. Story 58. If you are wandering in the forest and see the same tree, you are lost. This applies not only to practical situations but also to dating advice. Story 59. Your house is only as big as your heart. I heard this sentence in the mosque from an older man while he was sharing his road trip experience to another country. He described how one man invited him and his friend to his home. Although it was small and had around 10 other flatmates living there, it made him feel sentimental. Story 60. I have a few quotes. Endeavor is the first step towards failure. No task is so small that it cannot be done. This has never happened, and now it has happened again. Story 61. When I first started working in healthcare as a caregiver in aged care, I was struggling and felt overwhelmed, which was putting a strain on the other caregivers. An older nurse approached me and, while being quite stern, advised me that I needed to learn how to handle my own responsibilities. At first, I was offended, but I soon realized she was right. I needed to learn how to solve problems on my own. After that, I started to perform much better, and now I have been working in all areas of healthcare for over 4 years. This lesson has always stayed with me whenever I embark on a new area in healthcare. Story 62. When stars go out, they do not just vanish. They become black holes. Your entire world is merely a running list of everything that could be improved, except for you. Story 63. I always have to look it up for the exact wording, but it has definitely stuck with me. Sometimes people use respect to mean treating someone like a person, and sometimes they use respect to mean treating someone like an authority. People who are accustomed to being treated like an authority might say, if you won't respect me, I won't respect you, meaning if you won't treat me like an authority, I won't treat you like a person. They think they are being fair, but they are not, and it's not acceptable. Story 64. I guess that is the story of life. What you most fear never happens, but what you most yearn for never happens either. This is the difference between life and fiction. I suppose it is a good trade-off, but I am not sure. Philip K. Dick. Story 65. Now hear me out. Is a quote from Adolf Hitler, who, after all, speaks today of the annihilation of the Armenians. He said this in reference to the Armenian genocide that took place during the First World War. It was largely overlooked, and to my knowledge, Turkey still doesn't acknowledge it. Hitler was alluding to the fact that this extermination of a people had gone unnoticed, so why wouldn't his? The first irony is that he didn't go unnoticed. Everyone remembers the Holocaust. But the second irony is that people, in my anecdotal experience, seem to only remember the Holocaust. Indonesia, Rwanda, Sudan, Cambodia, and Guatemala are all sites of genocide post-World War II that are seldom talked about. The worst part is I'm probably missing some significant ones. Story 66. You can please some of the people all the time, you can please all the people some of the time, but you cannot please all the people all the time. Story 67. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky. Hafiz. Story 68. Here are some of my favorites that I have collected over the years. Courage is knowing it might hurt and doing it anyway. Stupidity is the same. And that is why life is hard. Jeremy Goldberg. We have to choose whether to share this land or to share the graveyard under it. Rami Elhanan. You cannot be honest with others while lying to yourself. Absolute beauty does not exist in external reality, but is rather an experiential phenomenon. A thing isn't beautiful because it lasts. Vision. It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life. Jean-Luc Picard. Study what is real, and you will learn to recognize what is fake. Alcohol is to depression and anxiety as salt water is to thirst. The only way to be normal in a society like this is to be complicit with things that are inhuman. Gary, Indiana. Civilization grows when people plant trees they will never enjoy the shade of. It takes at least 90 days for someone to show you who they are. Jonathan Decker. The degree to which a person can grow is directly proportional to the amount of truth they can accept about themselves without running away. Story 69. America, this land of mine is filled with prisoners who share the same plans as I do. I am a walking contradiction. I love my position but easily could have ended up in that prison. Jay-Z isn't my favorite, but as a black man doing well for himself, this resonates deeply. Story 70. Not everything that happens to you is your fault. However, everything that happens to you is your responsibility. Story 71. I have not failed. I just found 1,000 ways that don't work. Thomas Edison. When in doubt, consider a different approach. Mythbusters shows that on the 1,001st attempt, you may decide to forget it and start from scratch again. Story 72. Pierre Poilievre made many quotes while enjoying a crispy, satisfying snack, possibly a cosmic crisp from Ontario. His uneducated and shameful approach during the interview felt like something out of an SNL skit. Story 73. For a successful technology, reality must take precedence over public relations, for nature cannot be fooled. Richard Feynman. I was a nuclear engineer and kept this on the wall of my office. Story 74. From a wedding. Let this be the day you look back on as the day you loved each other the least. Story 75. Though nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass and glory in the flower, we will grieve not. Rather, we will find strength in what remains. Story 76. Bad manners are the fault of the parent, not the child. A true victory is to make your enemy see they were wrong to oppose you in the first place, to force them to acknowledge your greatness. Story 77. Burn the ships. It is impossible to know who said it first, but it is often attributed to Hernán Cortés. The story goes that he was traveling to the New World and landed in modern-day Mexico, believing the land was uninhabited. When Cortés and his 500-man crew arrived, they found not uninhabited land, but a fully functional city, Tenochtitlan, with over 1 million people. His crew was starved and tired, and they quickly began discussing mutiny. Upon realizing this, Cortés turned to his captain and said, "Burn the ships," a gesture intended to remove the option to retreat. It is a good reminder that sometimes the only way forward is to eliminate the option to fall back. Story 78. Build a man a fire and you warm him for a day. Set a man on fire and you warm him for the rest of his life. Story 79. The first principle is that you must not deceive yourself, as you are the easiest person to deceive. A Richard P. Feynman. Story 80. The world is fine as it is. Giordano Bruno was a highly intelligent monk who was burned at the stake for refusing to recant his belief in other planets and that the Earth was not the center of the universe. This reflects a certain acceptance of the state of things that, having read his works, Bruno surely expressed with a deeply annoyed sigh. It's amusing, yet calming, and simply true. The world doesn't need to be fair or rely on our opinions. It is just fine as it is. Story 81. Seek to understand before being understood. Whether the glass is half full or half empty, it can be refilled. Story 82. My grandmother always said, when faced with a difficult decision, choose the one you will regret the least. And it has served me well. Story 83. I have 3 favorite quotes. I don't know who said it, but the lack of effort and care put into your work shows only a disdain for your own future. I often share this with the kids at school. Another quote that I came up with is, society is cooperation, not competition. It turns out Peter Kropotkin said something very similar 100 years before I did. I swear I never heard it before. Finally, Friedrich Nietzsche said, "Those who fight monsters must take great care that they do not become monsters themselves." This is related to the idea that when you stare into the abyss stares back at you, but with a much clearer meaning. Story 84. People are what they do, not what they say they believe in or what they claim to do. The only true judge of one's character is their actions, not their words. Story 85. When you are older, you will understand that people do not mean to be unpleasant. It is just that they are all troubled inside. Joel Robinson, Mystery Science Theater 3000. I think either The Time of the Apes or a Gamera episode. Story 86. When I am asked, "What do you know?" I reply, "Eggs don't bounce, fly waste doesn't splatter, and waste is good for the garden." Story 87. My ex's mother told me that not everything is going to be clear-cut. I broke up and left him within a month, which really put a lot into perspective for me. Story 88. Everything else matters when you are healthy, but when you are not, nothing else matters except your health. Story 89. A quote from one of my old college professors who has since passed away. "I will not quit. By God's grace, I can do it." That has kept me going for over 20 years. I miss you, Dr. Calder. Story 90. That was the thing to remember about all monsters. They love to frighten people, but the minute you stare them down, they turn tail and run. I've ingrained this phrase as a reminder not to tolerate toxic behavior from anyone. Coworkers, romantic partners, or friends. If you don't give in to their energy and call out their behavior, they back off and become quiet because they know there's no excuse for their actions. This quote holds varying significance for me. Story 91. In the darkest times, hope is something you give yourself. That is the meaning of inner strength. I love Uncle Iroh. Story 92. He was the whirlwind that swept me up and kept me forever hovering, never touching down on anything but him. I read this somewhere long ago from a woman speaking about her husband who had passed away. I have tried to find the source over the years and always come up empty-handed. I remember it was a book of poetry from the library, but that is all I recall. Story 93. It isn't what it could have been, and it isn't what it should have been. It is what it is. John Aniston. Story 94. That moment from Andy in The Office can make me cry instantly. I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them. Story 95. Are you actually going to do something about it? Or are you just going to sit there and complain? Pema Chodron. Story 96. Commander Vims didn't like the phrase, "the innocent have nothing to fear." Believing the innocent had everything to fear, mostly from the guilty, but, in the longer term, even more from those who say things like, "the innocent have nothing to fear." Story 97. I have to have more cowbell. Christopher Walken. Written by Will Ferrell. Story 98. If it's not a definite yes, then it's a no. Someone's father once told me this, and it has been extraordinarily helpful in my life, especially when making decisions about whether to have children or be in a particular relationship. Story 99. So many birds of a feather flock together. You attract where you are at. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. When in doubt, do not. Don't judge a book by its cover. If you stand for nothing, you will fall for everything. Leave it better than you found it. The early bird gets the worm. A happy spouse makes a happy house. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. A jack of all trades is a master of none. Great minds think alike. It is always darkest before the dawn. Story 100. As much as I dislike Dr. Phil, years ago while switching through the channels, I heard him say, "Find your child's currency." It made a significant difference for me in raising a hyperactive child, who was later diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and autism. Story 101. I was at a urinal once when a tall man walked in and stood at the urinal next to me. He said, "Hey, I have some words of wisdom for you. Forget them all and the foolish ones even more." Story 102. I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened. So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. Story 103. Existence is beautiful if you let it be. Life is not a question. There does not need to be an answer. Story 104. I honestly don't remember where I saw it first. If you are the smartest person in the room, find a new room. Story 105. Hateful is the dark blue sky, vaulted over the dark blue sea. Death is the end of life. Why? Should life be all labor? Story 106. Tell my tale to those who ask. Tell it truly, the ill deeds along with the good, and let me be judged accordingly. The rest is silence. Story 107. There is no sense in worrying about the things you have control over, because if you have control over them, there is no sense in worrying. And there is no sense in worrying about the things you do not have control over, because if you do not have control over them, there is no sense in worrying. Mickey Rivers. Story 108. You know, there are many fine-looking women in the world. However, not all of them bring you lasagna at work. Most of them may not be faithful to you. Story 109. Chance favors only the prepared mind. Louis Pasteur. Strict adherence to formal ritual is a clear indication that one has nothing better to contemplate. Unknown. Story 110. The only thing that works in this world is that you treat others how they treat you. Those who treat me with kindness, I will repay that kindness tenfold. But those who treat me with injustice, who use me, who hunt me down or hurt my friends, I will repay that injustice 100 times over. Story 111. I was at a Greyhound station in Reno, Nevada, on my way back to Kentucky from California. There were about 5 men talking casually while waiting for the next bus. One of them was a muscular black man, recently released from prison, wearing gray sweatpants and a sweatshirt, likely given to him upon his release. He was sharing his story when the announcement for our bus came through the speakers. He finished with, "All I know is if you want to rob a liquor store, you might as well rob a bank because the charges are the same." Story 112. 2 quotes come to mind. The first is from The Great Gatsby. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been reflecting on ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. But more and more, I think of Saint Just's. The force of things has perhaps led us to do things that we did not foresee. Story 113. Each one of you follows the fox's tracks, and collectively, you are empty-headed. Solon spoke about people blindly following politicians around 600 BCE. Story 114. It will, Wit said, but then it will get better. Then it will get worse again. Then better. This is life, and I will not lie by saying every day will be sunny. But there will be sunshine again, and that is a very different thing to say. That is the truth. I promise you, Kaladin. You will be warm again. Story 115. Faster alone, further together. Of all the battles a person could fight, a war against oneself is the hardest to win. Story 116. If you raise your children, you can spoil your grandchildren. If you spoil your children, you will be raising your grandchildren. Story 117. Worrying is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it will not get you anywhere. Story 118. The person who is profoundly depressed and considers suicide does not do so out of hopelessness or any abstract belief that the positives and negatives of life do not balance. And certainly not because death suddenly seems appealing. The individual in whom their invisible agony reaches a certain unendurable level will take their life the same way a trapped person will eventually leap from the window of a burning high-rise. Make no mistake about individuals who leap from burning windows. Their fear of falling from a great height is just as significant as it would be for anyone standing speculatively at the same window, simply evaluating the view. The fear of falling remains a constant. The variable here is the other fear, the flames of the fire. When the flames get close enough, falling to death becomes the slightly less terrible of two fears. It's not a desire for the fall. It's a terror of the flames. And yet nobody on the sidewalk, looking up and shouting, "Don't!" and "Hang on," can truly understand the leap. Not really. You would have to have personally been trapped and felt the flames to fully comprehend a terror that goes far beyond the fear of falling. Story 119. Happiness begins at the edge of your comfort zone. This encouraged a little introvert like me to say yes to things I never would have, and I had a great time in my 20s. However, the lockdown fully changed that. Story 120. I dislike promoting drugs, alcohol, violence, or insanity to anyone, but they have always worked for me. Hunter S. Thompson. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.